So we're just going to improvise something, and then we'll kind of talk about the thoughts and the concepts that went into it. That's correct. Okay, so in order to improvise, it's a lifetime study. And there are basically two ways to be a musician. You can be a reproducer of sound or a creator of sound. You can interpret music or you can create it. And it's the difference between playing classical and jazz you can sometimes refer to as the difference between playing Beethoven and being Beethoven. What the jazz musician is trying to do is they're trying to create on the spot. And so if you were to open up Oscar Peterson's brain, you would see that he is hearing the music at the same exact moment for the first time as the audience. It's a very interesting process. It's a natural process. So what I found in many, many years of teaching and playing is that this is something that's natural for everybody, and especially musicians. If you can play music at all, you can improvise. The faculty of improvisation is a natural human thing. It's just that we haven't been taught step by step how to do it. It's just as natural as the birds flying around and speaking their language. Music is our language, and it's a universal language. So when I was teaching at Berkeley, one of the interesting things was always to see a student that couldn't speak English. They just came right off the boat from someplace and started at Berkeley. They were taking English lessons. And as soon as we couldn't communicate except when we started to play a song. And then we were communicating perfectly. So there's a lot that goes into improvisation, but I thought it would be fun to take some of what I just did apart and just show you some of the thought processes and concepts that go into being able to improvise jazz. So when we're talking about improvising jazz, this is really a wonderful instrument. I devoted my whole life to it. And as Bill Evans said, he never spent an unhappy moment at the piano. It's such a great instrument because of the capability of the instrument to utilize all the parts of music. So with these 10 fingers, you can play melody, you can play harmonies, you can improvise melodies, improvise harmonies. You can play chords of any amounts of notes. We can play 5 note, 6 note, 7 note, 8 note, up to 10 note chords. You can play the bass part, like what a bass player is doing. You can play that on your left hand and play a bass. And in the right hand, you can do like a clarinet player and play a solo. Or you can play a bass in the left hand and be like a banjo player in the right hand and play chords. So the musical possibilities that a piano represents for a jazz musician when it comes to improvisation is a thing that always got me really interested. And a lot of what we do as jazz pianists, especially in a solo context, is figure out how to use these different elements within the two hands to create a complete performance. So whenever you're listening to basic jazz, and there are many different kinds of jazz, but traditional jazz, but the jazz that we hear most of the time, what you hear will be based on a series of chords, okay? So the foundation of jazz improvisation is a series of chords that is related to a tune, a standard tune. So what I just played was based on a tune, There Will Never Be Another You, which is a super standard. And so where the jazz musician starts is in the song itself. So the song has two parts. The song has the harmony, we can do in the left hand, and the melody in the right hand. And so the song itself, what we have, as jazz musicians have been given is this song. That's the song. So the song has a certain progression of chords that we do in the piano, typically in the left hand. And so this is a given. When we're improvising in jazz piano, when we're playing on a tune, it's what we call playing over changes. So we're creating a new melody over the chords from the original tune. So what you see when you're seeing a jazz pianist or another jazz musician playing is that in the mind of the jazz musician, this sequence of chords is going around like a merry-go-round, like a carousel. This chord to this chord. This is our fixed point, the chord progression. So the chords would be here. Now on piano, you can play the chords in the left hand, or you can play the chords in two hands, which is nice too. Two-handed chords are really jazz piano at its finest. So this is going around in my mind if I'm trying to improvise on it. And I'm not hearing the melody of the original song, but I'm hearing the chord changes in my mind. And rather than play the melody, I'm going to try to create something spontaneously on the spot that fits these chord progressions, and let's do it. Okay, this is the challenge of playing jazz. So I'll just take the first four measures, and we'll just try creating some new things over the first four measures. There's our melody. Now in this case, the chords are in the left hand, so I'm going to keep that and keep the chords in the left hand. Now, we're going to improvise something over the first four measures. Okay. Now, you could actually sing the melody of the song to yourself if you want. And this is one way to understand jazz, if you don't understand it, is to know what song the group is playing, or the soloist, and then to actually sing the song to yourself as you hear the improvisation. Because the improvisation is based on the underlying harmony. So I'm just going to take the first four measures, and I'm just going to see what comes. Now, the thing with jazz is once you study the language and the approach, jazz is a language, just like, Italian, German, English. And it's through study and through studying the approaches of improvisation that one can learn to do this. So it is natural to everybody to do this. But there is definitely a learning curve, and that's the thing when I travel worldwide, I see that many people want to play jazz because it's something about it that's so free. And there's even a kind of jazz called free jazz, which is often called free jazz because nobody will pay to see it. We've all heard that kind of stuff. We're talking about traditional jazz. Although I heard that this is free also. This is a different kind of free jazz clinic, sponsored by the university. So I can hear this progression of chords in my mind because I spent a whole lifetime trying to do this, and I've basically forsaken everything else in order to learn how to hear these chords in my mind. So that's what I'm doing. I'm hearing the chords, and then there is an aspect of improvisation which is totally mysterious, and we like it that way. No one really knows how this happens. What we know is that the human being has a faculty within them where they can spontaneously express themselves through music. And this is something that's innate, and it just comes. If the preparation is there, then the music just comes. And this is the most interesting part of improvisation. All great players have said, the music doesn't come from them, it comes through them. So a lot of the thing that you're trying to do when you're improvising is you're just trying to connect yourself through practice. It's like you want to get water on a farm and you know where the well is and you know how to get the water. And so if you need water, you just go to the well and you get some, and there it is, and it's there every time, unless there's a drought, which happens musically sometimes too. But with improvisation, it's a place that you can go in yourself, where the music is always flowing. It's really kind of amazing. Not what I'm doing, but just the whole field of jazz improvisation is amazing. So you just, through practice and study, I'm hearing these chords, and I just got to go to that place where the music is always flowing. And then I'm going to hear what comes. It's like it's given to you almost. It's some kind of mysterious connection between what you're doing and what's happening. Nobody really understands it. It's a lot of what you've studied and what you've practiced, and in the moment of improvisation, there's a mysterious extra element where the music just kind of appears for you. And that's what everybody loves about improvisation. Okay, so we're just going to take the first 4 measures. I'm just going to improvise a few different things and see kind of what comes at the moment. So one of the things I can think about is the length of the notes I'm going to play. So to help you improvise, you want to think about 2 things: musical elements and improv concepts. So musical elements means just the notes that you're playing, how long they're lasting, like this. So I can make a decision, a conscious decision. I'm going to play a little melody on this first 4 measures where the notes are going to hold. It's not going to be a lot of movement. It's going to be a lot of holding notes. So with that kind of instruction, the little guy in my head can come up with something. Okay, so this is the first part. You can try it again. So the tune is, okay, now I'll see what, I'm not hearing the melody, but I am hearing the chords, and trying to make a melody that fits over it. That's pretty good. Okay, we can go for some help notes. So that's another melody that fits over the progression. Now we can try using notes that have more movement to it. So we can try a flowing line over the chords. And that might sound like this. It's a different type of a melody. It's more of a flowing line. The interesting thing to think about this as you're hearing about improvisation is that actually we're all improvising something all the time when we're living and we're not thinking about it. We're improvising speech. So we've learned a language through many different channels, and then we go through the rest of our lives and we're improvising speech based on what you want to convey, what you want to express, and what you want the other person to feel or understand. We're improvising speech. It's exactly what's happening with music. We're improvising phrases the whole time. So we have a slow moving line. It's definitely, the music comes someplace up here, definitely. I don't know where exactly, but every time you think about it, it's like, oh, okay, it's coming from here someplace. Like I wouldn't think, like, where's the next melody coming and look at the floor. That just it wouldn't make any sense. You have to kind of go up there. That's why you see a lot of, like Ray Charles, he's not going like this. He's going like this, you know, like his energy is like way, way up. Okay. Now, the basis of all jazz improvisation is what we call the swing eighth line. Swing eighth line. So the basis of jazz is rhythm. Everybody can feel that. That's the essence of the music, is the rhythm. So the basic rhythm of improvisation is swing eighth. And the swing eighth is interesting because it's a different way to play eighth notes. So if you're playing classical music, you'll play it like this. This would be 8 to 16. The notes are coming even. It's like New York, New York, New York, New York, New York. In jazz, we syncopate it, and just the basic sound of the line and the melody is automatically syncopated. So instead of this, we're going to play in jazz the same notes. So the swing eighth line is the basis of all improvisation. So this is what a swing eighth line sounds like. Can you feel that? That's the basic feel of the rhythm of improvisation. So this is one of the good things to know if you're going to try to improvise, is that you're generally going to be trying to create a line made out of swing eighth notes. That's the basis. From swing eighth notes, we can go into faster lines. So the next faster line would be a triplet line. So a triplet line would be like this. Triplets is Tennessee. Tennessee, 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 Tennessee. If you say Tennessee Williams, you'll get really messed up because then it's very, you have to keep it Tennessee, Tennessee, Tennessee. So I'll get a signal from this little man who lives in my head. Triplets. And when you get that, when I get that signal is when I have to execute. And all of the practice that goes on for decades before the performance is just so, in the moment of performance, when that little guy says triplets, you can do it. So triplets, again, like this. Tennis. So I'm still hearing the basic chord. So you can still think, there'll never be another night like this. Standing there with someone new. And then if you hear a triplet melody over that, it could sound like this. It's interesting. You're always trying to take your melody, and it's like an Olympic routine where you have the gymnasts come out and they're on the balance beat, and they come out and do this really wild routine, and then they have to stick the landing. And if they stick the landing after the great routine, then they're a winner. With improvisation, we're trying to do the same thing with that. We're trying to create a melody. You can almost picture like gymnasts kind of running to the beat and then like going through circles and hoops and then sticking the landing. The most important thing with improvisation is to stick the last note, or to stick the landing. Because that kind of creates a kind of sure sound to what you're doing for the listener. The listener can feel, that's complete, that's a new sentence. So we'll try to stick a couple of triplet lines. Okay, right? So we're stuck again. Pretty good. Now, if we want to go faster, we can do a 16th line. 16th line is Mississippi. Mississippi, Mississippi, Mississippi. Let's see how this works out. We can start short. I'm teaching somebody out usually, if they know how to improvise with the slower lines, I'll say, let's try a really short 16th line. And then they can usually kind of stretch to that. 2, 3, 4. Mississippi, Mississippi, Mississippi. 2, 3, 4. Mississippi. Still, the chords are going like a merry-go-round in my mind. And I tell the little guy, okay, now create some really fast lines. He goes, okay, boss. Like that little guy from Fantasy Hour or something. Okay. Play a 16th line. Play a 16th. Okay, boss. Okay, boss. Okay. So this is what we call improv concepts. Okay, musical elements and then improv concepts. You put them together and you have improvisation. It's not, it is true that when somebody improvises, they're just sitting in front of you and they're creating music that they don't know what's going to happen next. They don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know nothing. But the approach to studying it, somehow you learn how to capture the bird of music, and then you can ride on that bird when you're playing. That's kind of how it works. You kind of have, it's like learning to ride a bird. Maybe that's why they call Charlie Parker the bird. Anyway, now what I want to do is, so here's the basic concept. So when you're trying to, so what I love is like guys like Art Tatum and Oscar Peterson, Bud Powell, Bill Evans. The great pianists are really great scientists. I mean, these are guys who spent their life devoted to learning how they can express what they feel in the moment through spontaneous music and against this chords progression, and there's many things involved in it. But the great players that we've been given through jazz history, which is now over 100 years old, I mean, we've had geniuses. I mean, like Einstein. You take somebody, Bill Evans, it's like an Einstein. He has figured out how to take an instrument and create all the parts of music, harmony, melody, and he's doing innovative things with everything, melody, harmony, chords, and it's all happening on the spot. So there are lots of concepts and parameters that you can use to help you. So when somebody like Bill Evans is playing, really the ultimate thing is we're the audience, he's the player, he's hearing the music in what we call the inner ear. He's hearing the music here, and he's able, through a lifetime of practice, to transmit that music from here to here at the same instant. That's what you do as a jazz musician for practice. You learn how to hear it here, and then connect the head and the fingers. Okay? So, all the parts of this instrument, the complex harmonies and the complex harmonies of the tunes and everything, I mean, that's a lot to think about. And the great players have really blazed the trail for all of us and showed us how we can approach it. So, if I'm thinking of a complete performance, it's just like a movie. So, in a movie, what they do first is they make a storyboard, right? They'll say, okay, this is kind of, here's our concept. We're going to have a movie about a tornado that hits a town someplace in the Midwest, and then people rebuild. Let's just say, I guess, off the top of my head. So you're generally not going to put the tornado right at the beginning. You might, it depends on, you could do that. You could do anything, just like in jazz, you could do it. But you're thinking of the arc of the performance. So if you're watching a movie, the director is totally aware and controlling the arc of what you see. That there'll be some generalized action, and then that will kind of come to a climactic point. And then that will be at 20 minutes into the movie. And then at 30 minutes into the movie, then it kind of goes back, and then it kind of goes along. And then the main character does something outrageous at like 42 minutes in. And then somebody dies at like 60 minutes in. And so they're thinking of an intensity grid. This is what all art is about. It's about developing a grid of intensity. So all of these kind of things I'm mentioning go into a moment of performance. A lifetime of thought and practice goes into a moment of jazz. So when I'm thinking about a solo piano thing, I'm thinking the same thing. I don't want to start off with a bang, because where do you go from there? You want to start off kind of easily and then build the intensity as you go. This is for solo. It's true of groups too, but for solo piano, you get a chance to make all of these decisions by yourself. If I'm playing with the big band, then we have an arranger who's already figured out a lot of this stuff for you. If you're playing solo jazz piano, you're like the guy with the puppets, the marionette. Okay, so there are various ways you can start off simply, and one of them is to change the kind of rhythm that you're showing the audience. So there are two basic kind of rhythms that you can play. One I call an indirect rhythm, and one is called a direct rhythm. Or the first one could be called even better, I like implied rhythm. And the second is direct rhythm. An implied rhythm is where you give a rhythm, but The rhythm is here. The pulse of improvisation. Okay, so in addition to chords, we have a pulse that we're aware of. Okay? The pulse is what ties the chords together and makes the tune. Okay? So my pulse, let's say, is here. It's like a metronom. Okay, now I can either show the audience where that pulse is, or I can imply where it is. If I show the audience where it is, it would be something like this. A walking bass line which is perfect for this kind of thing. My teacher, Lenny Sestano, was the guy who more or less invented these walking bass lines. He saved a lot of money on bass players. And often bass players are kind of tall and they have long hair and they take these big basses and they have to put it next to you on the airplane and really drag. And so I mean we can kind of say goodbye to the bass players. Okay, so this is what we call a direct rhythm. The audience can feel this perfectly. Right? I mean, we're knocking over the head with the beat. That's one way. Another way you can indicate a direct rhythm is what we call 4 to the bar in the left hand. This is a style that came from a guy named Freddie Green who played with the count bass. And 4 to the bar sounds like this. So here I'm playing the chords. I'm playing 4, and every beat, instead of playing a walking bass line, I'm playing a chord. It's kind of an old style, but it's kind of cool. Something about it that's cool. It's like a shuffle. And so the song is still going. Whatever we're doing, the song is That's another way. So the rhythm is very direct. An implied rhythm is where you're not doing that, but you're playing a kind of a figure where the person can feel the pulse, the audience can feel the pulse, but it's like not showing all of your cards when you're playing poker. You're just showing a couple of cards. So this would be an implied rhythm. So everybody will kind of feel the pulse there, but I'm not going 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually half of that. 1, 2. So you're conveying the sense of pulse without showing all of it to the audience. Make sense? Another kind of implied pulse could be what we call a halftime bass. I'm here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. You can still feel the pulse, but again, I'm not showing the whole thing. This is a good way to start an improvisation. So if you're trying to build intensity, what you'll do is you can start with the pulse. So the first type of pulse that I might play if I'm performing would be an implied pulse. Okay? Now whether you play the melody or not is totally up to you as a jazz musician. You can play the melody and then kind of everybody will know where you are. I mean, that's kind of easy. And a lot of times jazz pianists will start with the melody and then comes the improvisation. But it's also possible to start with the improvisation and scrap the melody altogether. And I kind of like doing that, just because it's a little more modern, and maybe it's kind of fun to confuse people. So let's say I'll start an improvisation with an implied rhythm. These things I won't do them the same way every time, but I have a schemata of what I'm doing. I have a flow chart of the kind of things I'll be doing. And then every time you do it, it will work out differently. So the flow chart will start with a low intensity improv and an implied rhythm in left hand. Okay, now we're going to start creating a new melody over the chords using this kind of rhythm. See, this is really not very intense. There's a lot of space in it. So it's like fine wine breathes. Fine jazz breathes also. chords are going around. I'm telling the little guy in my head, let's make an easy kind of a melody, and we'll have this kind of an implied rhythm to start. One thing you can do as a jazz musician is you can put the melody in every now and then just to kind of drive people nuts. So you can go. Like, they've never heard it before, all of a sudden. Oh, good, the melody. Okay, so from an implied rhythm, it would be natural and would be a good source of development to go into a direct rhythm after that. So I can choose a lot of things. Let's just say I choose a walking bass line, which is a great style. This is a great style of jazz piano. And the walking bass line is creating a melody over the chords, but it's a melody in the left hand. When you're improvising lines, what we call lines, this is that's called lines. In the left hand, you can do something similar with the walking bass, but that would be in quarter notes. I'm still thinking of the chords. So the left hand is taking the function of the bass. So let's say that will be my implied rhythm, my direct rhythm. So I'll start with an implied rhythm, kind of just get the ball rolling easily. And maybe I'll go one time around the chords. I'm thinking the chords are going around, we're going to take one complete ride on the carousel, and then we're going to change what's happening in the left hand. See? So this kind of thinking, advanced preparation, is something that helps a lot when you have to improvise in public, which is always a trick. Okay, let's try this much. Like the next scene. That's a walking bass line stuff. So as a jazz pianist, I'm looking for always more ways. How are we doing? 5 minutes left?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I have all this to go through. Okay, well, this was what happened. So you get the basic concept that we're trying to change the intensity. There's something that stays the same with improvisation, which is the chords in traditional jazz. And then there are things that change. And the things that change will be the melody or bass line. You want to change styles constantly so you can create this full performance. That's basically what's going on. Okay, so now I'll try a little full performance already, and then we'll say that this is what happened, and we'll be happy with that. Okay, so we're playing today on let me Questions? Anybody? Any questions? Go ahead.
When your left hand is in the air, it's on the right hand's front, you left the ground.
Right.
Do you work within specific modes, like as a guitarist?
Yes.
Are there specific ones you tend to?
Yes, yes. There's something that we call, like there's a chord, there's a relationship of the chords that we're talking about to scales. So the chords that are going around at these points have corresponding scales that are just a good place to start from. So definitely in the study of a song, when you're trying to improvise, the first thing you do is work out the chords, and the second thing you do is work out the scales that go with that chords. You won't be restricted like 100% to the scales, but it's like a basic roadmap. So in the preparation for improvising, I'm definitely thinking, what's the basic scale, basic notes that I'll be using to improvise here? So that's what we call chord scale theory. Definitely an important part. Questions? Please.
So if you put Oscar Peterson over here and Count Basie over here, you sound like you're leaning, you put a little bit more like Peterson.
I think so.
So what, could you show us what Count Basie did?
Yeah, well,
that
Count
made
Basie
this
stopped-
sound so distinct?
Yeah, Count Basie's thing was Count Basie's thing is sparsity. Count Basie is a master. He's like one of the Japanese calligraphers who just puts like one line on it, but it's perfect and it's like amazing. And everyone is different in the masterpiece. Count Basie is like this, and he had two basic areas where he would play. He would play either up here, or he would play big down here. It was big into contrast of dynamics. So Count Basie would do something like on the same song. And then all of a sudden, that's Count Basie. Brilliant, brilliant. You have to, I mean, there were guys around this time, Art Tatum, who could play crazy, and Count Basie came up, let's go exactly in the opposite direction. And he pulled it off perfectly. He just sit there, very elegantly, nicely dressed. And he, now look at Count Basie, and he just smiles and goes, and it's perfect. He's one of my favorites.
he would also direct his whole orchestra with
Yeah,
his
sure.
index finger
Sure.
on the piano.
Yeah.
This is amazing to watch.
And they all waited, and then the band stopped, and he wasn't going to Please.
So there's kind of the two parts of like actually hearing the music in your head that you want to play and then actually replicating it. So which do you find harder? The getting it to sound right from what you hear, or?
That's an interesting question. When, well, it's like the human mechanism is not necessarily perfect. Okay, so that's when you hear Keith Jarrett play, who's the greatest of all time. And if you're interested in finding out about Keith Jarrett, I have a master class about him on my website, and it's very interesting. This is a man who's like perfect. And he can stand in front of Carnegie Hall and do, so I'm talking about the things that go into a jazz performance. There's chords, there's melodies, there's different approaches and styles. Keith Jarrett, it's empty space when he goes on. And he creates the greatest thing you ever heard from zero. It may have chords, it may not. It may be a melody, it may not be a melody. It could be anything. And it'll always turn out perfect. But most of us are not Keith Jarrett. In fact, all of us, except Keith Jarrett, are not Keith Jarrett. So what happens is you'll tend to hear things correctly because you'll tend to hear the right notes. But sometimes the fingers don't cooperate exactly. And that's a lot of what we do in practice, is to try to make that connection solid so you can count on it in the performance. But, it's not perfect. And sometimes I would say that it's easier to hear the music than to execute it. But for the player, it's really one thing. That's the art.
When you walk on the stage tonight, you essentially know what your program's going to be.
Essentially.
But you don't have it, you're totally improvisational in terms of interpreting.
I'll just talk about how I do it, because there's a lot of different ways to do it. There are a lot of, let's just take pianists. Keith Jarrett is an example of somebody who feels totally comfortable in Carnegie Hall in front of 3,000 people on the piano to have absolutely nothing in his mind when he goes on stage. And you'll watch him, and you actually see him reaching for it, like, what's next? And he really doesn't know. And he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know the style. He doesn't know, there's no song, forget about it. It's all just like what the muse is telling him at the moment. And you can watch the process. He's scared because you can see that he's freaked out. And he's like, where's the next note? And he always finds it. That's like a particular kind of genius. Bill Evans would have the melodies of the piece, which we've more or less worked out most of the time. So if he was playing this piece, he would have ahead of time work out a nice arrangement. So Bill Evans would probably kind of more or less figure out an arrangement for the melody. And then after the melody, he's off. Although the chords, if he's playing in a group, the group arrangement may be set too. So the bassist will know, well, Bill is going to play the melody, and then he's going to do 3 times of improvisation, and then I'm going to take a solo. So that kind of stuff is kind of a given too. So it's just a question of where your talents are. So what I do personally is, if I'm going to play a chord thing, I like to have time to kind of get a basic grasp of what I'll do. I don't trust my harmonic improvisation to the point where I can just create a whole new two-hand thing if I'm performing. But the improvisation part, the lines, that I can do. That's
Amazing.
so everybody's different. Some people can really improvise the harmonies and they'll have a bass line, a melody that they've worked out. So, you have to find out where your limitations are and go with that. But I follow the Bill Evans school more for songs. If I'm just improvising, like plain improvisation, then it's all improvised. But if there's a song to it, and you hear a nice song with chords, a nice arrangement, I like to kind of be thinking about that beforehand. Yeah.
Just kind of follow up the question that was just asked. You play a piece, okay, and someone says, "Play it again. I really loved it. Play it again." Is it going to be the same?
Never.
It's never gonna be the
No.
same. So like, that's.
Only the first,
made that
only the melody of the song.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a famous jazz story about Coleman Hawkins, who was one of the great saxophonists. He did what you said. He improvised like this beautiful melody, beautiful over body and soul. So he improvised this just wonderful melody. That was great, and they put it out on record, and it became a bestseller, and everybody loved it. And every time he went someplace, they said, "Play it for body and soul." He had to go to his own record and listen to it and learn it from his own record. And then he could go out and people wanted to hear it. Right? So it's never even close to the same. But the elements are the same. The elements are the same. That I'll have chords and melodies and eighth notes and triplets and things like that. So it's improvising within, what my teacher used to call it was stretching out within the form. There's a form which is the song. And as an improviser, you're stretching that form. You're stretching the song and creating something new over it. So that's typically how it's done, although there are other ways.
Well, I think we have to wind this down. Maybe one more question?
Okay.
And then we'll.
Thank you.
Two questions.
Sure.
First and thirdly, I noticed, excuse me, that you never use the sustain pedal.
The same what?
The sustain pedal.
Oh, that's
Is it
interesting.
ever used in jazz?
Oh, yes, it's a question of the tempo. The sustained pedal is the question of the tempo. So, and what you're doing. So, the sustained pedal is some brilliant concept where all the notes are ringing, right? Now, if you're playing like a fast improvisation and you're changing chords, if you hold the pedal down, it's going to sound like this. It's a mud. But if you're playing the melody part, right there, where you have the holding of the chord, there's where you can use your pedal. I once sat in the front row of a Chick Corea concert. I couldn't see him. I could only see his foot. And the whole time it's going like this. He's pedaling up and down. The basic rule of pedaling is hands down, pedal up. Watch this. When you play, the way you use a pedal is, when you play down, when you go to play the chord, hands down on the keyboard, your foot comes up so you're not pedaling. And then when it's holding, the pedal goes down. When you play the next chord, as soon as you play that next chord, unless it's very similar to the first one, which usually is not, hands down, pedal up, and then pedal down. Hands down, pedal up. So it's used in balance.
And the second question referred to when we talked about a whole group playing together.
Yes.
And everybody improvising. So how do they practice? Because obviously when they get together as a group, the improv is going to change. So how do you know
Well,
the same key or mode, or what do you do?
Okay, because if you opened up the head of each of the players in the jazz group, you would see the same sequence of chords going on. We all have a common frame of reference, which is the chords. And the idea of a jazz performer is somebody that is able to create new melodies over a chord sequence. That's a given. I mean, if somebody's up there playing, that means they can do that. So what we do in the jazz group is we'll say, we're going to play this song, and we'll play the melody first, and then Fred will take a solo, and then Joe will take a solo, and then Phil will take a solo, and then the drums will take a solo, and then we'll all improvise together, and then we'll play the melody, and we'll be done. And so that's the thinking that goes into a group. Who's going to do what? It's a given that if you're up there in that situation, you can do it. But it's how the group fits together. And there are things you can do when you're playing in a group that are like, you make eye contact, you go, okay, go, you're so good. And it's kind of fun. It's fun. I mean, it's a fun interaction. It's a pretty deep way to relate to it.
Thank you. One last round of applause.